Welcome, guys, to another session of NBA Daily Fantasy Basketball with me, Jericho. As always, my Twitter is at InJericho'sWords. I've been getting a lot of great feedback lately. I'm glad you guys like the explicit content. It's hard for me to really have any rants today because I fucking went off yesterday. Scored a 336 on my main lineup, and every one of my tournament lineups finished over 320. So, very solid night last night. I won't talk about that too much. I know you guys are trying to get into the 4-game slate that we have tonight. Real quick, it looks like the first game is Philadelphia at Brooklyn. I almost fell asleep while I was reading the fucking team names right there. So you got a 7.5 point spread. Both teams suck. You've got an over-under of 197.5. Don't let the over-under deceive you. Both of these teams should provide plenty of fantasy points. There should be plenty of pace going on in this game. Let's start on the Brooklyn side because there is a lot of guys that I like. And when I'm running my optimizers and when I'm looking at who to play, I'm coming up with a lot of Brooklyn Nets. So to answer your question, which I'm sure it's going to be how many Brooklyn Nets can I safely play tonight? On a 4-game slate against Philadelphia, there's a good chance that I roll out 4 Brooklyn Nets tonight. I don't feel great about doing it, but the slate just kind of forces you to play at least 2 or 3 of them, and then 4 due to price. I think they all 4 fit in pretty well. Let's start with Brook Lopez. He's the top option on the Nets. The guy has been the definition of consistency this year. I really like him, especially against Jahlil Okafor, who doesn't play a lot of defense and doesn't rebound quite as well as he should. And also, he looked like shit last time out. So, at 8,300 on FanDuel, I feel pretty good about Brook Lopez. There's a good chance I take him over DeMarcus Cousins, which sounds fucking crazy. But when you look at the consistency and the ability to stay out of foul trouble, I think Lopez is a cash game staple. On DraftKings, I think he's even lower. I remember looking at him earlier. He's a lock on DraftKings. If you don't play Lopez in your cash games at DraftKings, I think you're making a big mistake. Thad Young, he had the one dud not too long ago. I want to say it was 2 games ago. But don't let that influence what you're trying to do with your lineups. I think he's still a great play. I think he's very consistent. And at 7K on FanDuel, I really, really like that play at power forward. Jarrett Jack, 6,200. He's priced right where his production is. And against Philadelphia, he's also one of my favorite plays of the night. Joe Johnson, another one of my favorite plays of the night. Coming off a huge game, price is at 5,800. He does a little bit of everything. He's getting 35 minutes a game. Really just a solid play in cash and in a tournament. This is the only guy I'm really unsure of on the Nets. I haven't made my mind up. That's Shane Larkin. Sitting at 4,400, I think that's a pretty good price. Obviously, he'll be low owned, so he's a great tournament option if you're looking to go that route at point guard. And I am really considering him in cash, especially if the game turns into a blowout. He'll obviously see more minutes. I've seen a lot of guys on Bogdanovic, and I don't blame you. He's going to see close to 25 minutes, and his price point is at 3,900 on a 4-game slate. I just don't really like him as a player. I don't think he produces enough while he's on the floor. But he obviously proved me long last time out, and he's a small forward. So don't let that scare you off if you want to go that route, especially in a tournament. But in cash, if you want to do that, I won't really hold that against you. There's not really much else that I see. Bargnani is active. No one gives a shit. Philadelphia, it's hard for me to peg the big man. Noel and Okafor, I really just don't know what they're going to do tonight. Noel has been okay as of late, but that was with Okafor out. I did see that both of them are starting, so that's not horrible. But this is a paced down game for them, and I don't think either guy is in a great spot. If you're going to play one in a tournament, I think the obvious choice is to go with Okafor, but I'm not going to roster him in cash. Robert Covington, his price is 6,700, and I really don't see him having a great game. A lot of people will go that route on a small slate. I don't think you need to go that route in cash. If you want to take a flyer on a tournament, I'm okay with that. Cannon and McConnell, neither one are really in consideration in my opinion. Jeremy Grant, he's a little interesting, and I think he's going to get 20 to 25 minutes, and it's really just a matter of how much he can produce in that window. At 4,900, I think his price is at its peak, and I think we need to wait for his price to come down before we roster him in cash games. Hollis Thompson, not a guy I'm looking at. Roten, no thanks. He's on a 16-minute limit, so let's not go that route. Next game, you've got the Clippers at the Bulls. It's a 1.5 point spread. If you're going to have a lot of exposure to superstars or high-priced guys, I stand behind saying that this is the game where you need to do it. And really the two guys I'm talking about are Jimmy Butler and Blake Griffin. Due to the spread alone in a 4-game slate in cash, I will be rostering both of those guys, not to mention how consistent they've been. We can talk about Pau Gasol, but at 8,500, he's a little out of my price range, especially for his production. Derrick Rose is very consistent. The only issue, he's consistently below his price tag at 6,900. Getting 28 to 30 fantasy points isn't really enough to validate that price. I don't know what he is on on DraftKings, but if he's under 6K, I think he's definitely an option. Mirotic, I don't love his minutes lately, been around 25. At 5,600, he's not a horrible play. If you want to go mid-tier at small forward, I won't hate you for that. Joakim Noah, a lot of guys talking about him today. He's been producing at a great clip, but his minutes scare me. And at center, I really think I'm going to go Brook Lopez. And I think if you don't go Brook Lopez, you should be taking the risk on DeMarcus Cousins due to his incredible upside. So Doug McDermott, 4-game slate, he's not the worst option. He sees 25 to 30 minutes. He just doesn't produce a whole lot. But if you're looking for a minimum salary guy to fit in another star, then I think he's definitely an option. Let's move on to the Clippers. You've got Blake Griffin at the top. 9,300, one of my favorite plays of the night. I'd venture to say he's a lock for tonight, actually. DeAndre Jordan, he's also a great play tonight against a interior of the Bulls that gives up a lot of fantasy points. And who knows, they may go hack a Jordan and he'll get an extra 12 points on free throws. You've got to factor that in when you think about rostering DeAndre. I won't have DeAndre because, once again, I like the consistency of Brook Lopez. But DeAndre is a great play in tournaments if you don't want to pay up for DeMarcus Cousins. Chris Paul, his price is 8,600. That's too high for me. I'm out on him. JJ Redick coming off a huge game and being priced at 4,200 is very interesting, and I think it's a very solid cash game play with the ability to go off in a tournament. He will be very high owned. Therefore, in cash, having exposure to him is not a bad thing. Anytime there's somebody that everyone else is going to own, it's never a bad idea to play them in cash. Going contrarian or going against the grain and playing people that others don't play is a good strategy if you feel very confident that that guy's not going to have a good game. But I feel like Redick's going to have a good game. He's going to get his 20 fantasy points, and he should be definitely someone to consider in cash. Crawford's out of consideration. Josh Smith and the rest of their bench also out of consideration. Let's move on to Game 3. You've got the Hawks at the Thunder, and you have a 7.5 point spread here in the Thunder's favor, I believe. So this is really, I know a lot of people are going to be talking about the likes of Millsap and Westbrook and Durant, and a 7.5 point spread doesn't mean it's going to be a blowout. It just means that it has the potential to be a blowout. So I will say right now I'm not rostering Westbrook or Durant because I don't know which one's going to have the better game. And I feel like if any team can slow down one of those guys or both, it's probably going to be Atlanta. Their team defense is great, and Millsap, Teague, I mean, they really have good defenders that can step out on the perimeter and cover those guys. Let's talk about the Hawks first. Paul Millsap, obviously the top option at 8,400. You know, I think he's going to get you 35 to 40 fantasy points. However, I don't know if that's enough for me to roster him against the Thunder. Al Horford at 7K, he is a great contrarian play at center. If you want to put him in a tournament, I believe he will be lower owned than a lot of the other center options. Jeff Teague is one of my favorite cash game guys tonight. I think he's going to do great on the offensive end, and obviously he will be stuck with defending Westbrook for a decent portion of this game. And Westbrook, although he has become better at taking care of the ball, he still has a decent amount of turnovers every night. So look for Teague to get a few extra defensive statistics, and also look for him to take over on the offensive end at times when the rest of the team is struggling. Kyle Korver's interesting, but I think if I'm going to go with a guy like that, I'd probably lean towards Redick, so I'm not huge on Korver at shooting guard. Thabo's going to see close to 30 minutes. I think he's a fine option. The only issue is his price has gone up to $4,400, and that probably prices him out of my range for cash games due to his lack of production when on the court. Bazemore's not even in the conversation. Let's move on to the OKC Thunder. You've got Russell Westbrook as the top option tonight at $10,800. His price has come down a tiny bit since Durant came back, but I don't see him breaking 50 fantasy points, and if he's not going to break 50, I don't want him on my team. Still not a bad option if you guys want to pay up there. I just don't think there's enough value to go with a stars and studs lineup tonight. You'd be having to play guys like Redick or guys like Bellinelli or guys like Noah, and I don't think that's the best route in cash this evening. Kevin Durant at $10,300. He had a great game last time out. Him and Westbrook seen around 35 minutes a game. I mean, they are the team. They're going to produce. It's just a matter of how well you can fit them in your lineups. If you have a lineup and you fit those guys in with a lot of solid guys around them, I think it's a great play, and I am all for you guys doing that. Serge Ibaka at 6,100. He's been very consistent. Foul trouble hurt him last game, and I think he still reached value. So, and I want to say he played like 20 minutes. So I've been rostering him pretty consistently, and I think I'm going to roster him again tonight. Anyone at 6,100 on a 4-game slate that can give you a really good shot at hitting value, I think is a great option. Waiters, his price has come up to 4,500. I don't think I'm going to play him at that price due to his ability to rely on scoring. Similar to how Brad Beal was last night, everybody played him, and if you rely on a shooter, sometimes you can get burned, and I try to avoid that at all cost in cash games. That's pretty much it here. I don't mind you guys having a lot of exposure to that game. I don't think it's going to turn into a blowout. I think the spread is pretty accurate, but I think it'll be close coming into the final 3 or 4 minutes of the game, which is all you need. Final game of the night, you've got the Knicks at the Sacramento Kings. 6-point spread and a 209.5 over-under. It's really interesting tonight because I feel like people are going to target the higher over-under games and not target the Philly at Brooklyn game that's going to have a ton of fantasy points and fantasy value. You can't just look at over-under and assume that that game is going to have the most fantasy points, because an over-under is based off of made baskets. Obviously, pace plays in there too, but just because Brooklyn and Philly is at 197.5 doesn't mean they're not going to have the same amount of possessions that a game like Atlanta and OKC or New York and Sacramento will have. If anything else, it creates more rebounds, it creates more turnovers, it creates more steals, more blocks. Games like Philly and Brooklyn are really the ones where you can set yourself apart from everybody else, and I think it's a game that you want to have a good amount of exposure to. I'd say minimum 3 players from that game, and then disperse the rest throughout however you see fit. LAC in Chicago obviously has the benefit of it being a closer game, predicted to be a closer game by Vegas than the others, and Vegas is actually pretty accurate. So anyway, let's move on to the final game. New York at Sacramento, 6-point spread, 209.5. Let's start with the Knicks. Carmelo Anthony, one of my favorite plays of the night. He's been seeing a good amount of minutes. They are coming off an embarrassing loss last night where they just got absolutely hammered. I think he'll see a lot of the ball. I think they're going to run their offense through him like they always do. And at 8,200, he is a very low-priced superstar that could at any point go off for 50 fantasy points. And I really don't mind his floor around the 30 to 35 range. I think that's safe. Kristaps Porzingis, I faded him last night, and I told you guys that I was going to fade him, and I told you not to play him. So if you played him, shame on you. Obviously, I couldn't have called it being that big of a blowout, but his inconsistency in minutes given to him by the coach is the reason I do not roster him in cash, and I don't think tonight's going to be any different. Although he has a great matchup against power forwards, as Sacramento kind of sucks at that position, and I'm really worried about Caspi being moved out of the starting lineup because of this lineup, and somebody like Kufis getting the start, which really scares me. Caspi cannot guard Porzingis, and obviously Caspi can't guard a Robin Lopez. So it's very interesting how matchups are going to play into this game, and the fact that it's the last game of the night means we might not have the starting lineups. I think Caspi, even though he's one of my favorite plays, he might get pushed out of the starting lineup tonight because they have to have somebody with the length to guard Kristaps Porzingis. That being said, Sacramento on the offensive end, Porzingis can't step out and guard Caspi, I don't think. Aflalo, no thanks. Calderon, Lopez. I've seen a lot of Jose Calderon love tonight, and I just, no. Don't play fucking Jose Calderon tonight. Don't do it. The Sacramento fucking Kings. DeMarcus Cousins is a fucking asshole. He is a lazy thug piece of shit that only cares about himself, doesn't care about his team, doesn't care about winning, doesn't care about his the way he's perceived throughout the public, and I think he's a piece of shit. He's at 9,800 tonight, which makes me tempted. His price has come down significantly. I think he could probably get 45 fantasy points in his sleep if he fucking tries. But how do you roster a guy that's so fucking volatile? I really don't get it. I mean, at the center position, that's a spot that you need. And if I'm relying on someone, I'm relying on Brook Lopez and not DeMarcus Boogie Thug fucking piece of shit Cousins to be in my cash game lineups. And I hope he fucking sees this video, so I'm not scared of him. Cousins, you're a fucking bitch. Learn how to play the fucking game. Rajon Rondo, probably not. He'll see a good amount of minutes, but this is a pace-down game for Sacramento. And what I mean when I say a pace-down game, I mean New York plays at a way slower pace than them, so they will get less fantasy points than they typically do. Rudy Gay looks great tonight. We all know Melo doesn't play a lot of defense, and Rudy Gay has been very consistent, and his price point at 7,100 is very appealing. You'll probably see him in my cash game lineup if you're a subscriber. Omri Caspi, we just talked about the matchup issues. I really don't know how this fares for him. I mean, I think he'll still get his 20 to 25 fantasy points, because even if he comes off the bench or plays a lot when Porzingis is out, he should do fine. So you should feel good about rolling him out in cash. Just don't be shocked if you see that he doesn't start tonight and they put somebody like Kufis in to stick with Porzingis. Not that Kufis could do much better, but the length and the strength may help. That's pretty much it. Kufis not an option for me. Like I said, we won't have that starting lineup. I try to get straight to the bread and butter and give you guys the plays at the beginning instead of babbling on about my services, my Twitter and all that fun shit. But if you like the videos, I hope you follow me. It's at In Jericho's Words. I'm really getting a good following. My subscribers have been awesome. If any of you guys are watching, I really appreciate the business. I hope that I do a good enough job for you guys. I know we did great last night. The subscription service is $10 a week or $30 a month, and it is a cash game lineup for every single night. It's a very solid deal, and I also give unlimited advice through direct messaging, so you can DM me any time of day, no matter what the question is, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Some of these websites have live chat for an hour a day. Mine's 24 hours a day. If you ever have questions and you are a subscriber, you can ask them, whether it be about season-long leagues, daily fantasy. I even help with NFL questions. Granted, it's not my strong suit, but I'm getting that down and getting a little better at it. So Anyways, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Again, my name's Jericho. Be sure to tune in. I'm going to try to do these every day. And if you roster DeMarcus Cousins, you better get on your knees and fucking pray that he doesn't turn up a dud piece of shit where he gets 3 fouls in the first 6 minutes of playing time, or where he runs out of breath when he's playing at a high altitude, or when he just decides to get pissed off and act like he doesn't give a shit and not get back on defense. So fuck you, DeMarcus Cousins. That's what I should have labeled this video. Signing off. Good luck tonight, fellas.